What does the goddamn line say, Tony?
Please do not use gendered language.
Then what? I'll be arrested, put in airport jail?
Look, you're going completely sideways, man.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
How dare you?
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
I'm Chris Hansen with Dave on NBC.
Jack Marius Tactheratrix.
Hi, I'm Spartacus.
Jackson, Sacramento, he, him.
Steven Seagal.
Sex offender guy.
I'm Keith Morris.
This is Muammar Gaddafi.
I'm Rick James, bitch.
Sorting through the lies.
The hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that.
We cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
And uncovering the centuries-long plan for world domination.
Learning about Cuba, having some food.
Let's talk about Chinese people.
Have you ever been in a Turkish prison? Swangles in Fort Lauderdale?
I have sent 6 of my Libyan missiles to blow up the Sears hardware department.
Nothing could be more fun than jumping off a cliff with 2 German bisexuals.
Oh, you English are so superior, aren't you?
Thank you, comrade.
And now, Macroaggressions.
That's what assholes call it.
With your host,
Buddy, I don't know who you are, but you're about to get chlamydia.
Charlie Robinson.
Hey, Whitey, where's your hat?
You want to drop the blame on Charlie and say it's all Charlie's fault.
He was a retard.
I get some goddamn diuretic.
Welcome to Macroaggressions. I'm your host, Charlie Robinson. Thanks for checking us out. If you're watching us on Iconic or you are listening wherever podcasts are served, thank you. We appreciate your support. We know you have a lot of choices out there, 850,000 other podcasts to be exact. So with the fact that you found us, I am grateful. We have 2 sponsors for the show, Curiosity Stream. If you're a documentary geek like I am, they've got everything that you need. They have high definition quality videos. There's thousands of shows that are streamed. You can stream it on your laptop, your television, your phone, or your tablet. Worldwide access, $2.99 a month. That is 10 cents a day. Give me a break. You have no excuse for this information. It's out there if you want to go watch JFK documentaries or moon landing or UFOs or whatever. They've got you covered at Curiosity Stream. The link is in the description, and support through that link helps to support our show as well. And our other sponsor is Scribd. If you like audiobooks or ebooks or e-magazines, Scribd has it $9.99 a month. It's cheaper than some of the competitors like Audible, and you can sign up. First month is free. If you don't like what you see, cancel anytime. The best books and audiobooks are waiting for you at Scribd. Please check them out. Well, I know quite a bit about a variety of topics, but if there is one topic that I am severely lacking, it is when it comes to religion, traditional religion, organized religion, the various aspects of Christianity, Catholicism. I just don't know it. But I know somebody who does. And that is Eric Gajewski. He is Trad Cat Knight. He's been doing this for a long, long time. You've probably heard him. And I am grateful to have him on the show. Eric, thanks so much for jumping in here and filling in all of the tremendous gaps that I have when it comes to religion. How did you even... I know that people come to religion a variety of different ways. How did you get involved? Was this something that was with your upbringing? Was it something that you came into a little bit later in life? Tell us how you got started with it all.
Yeah, I guess my story is kind of interesting. You know, I was raised Catholic, or what I understood to be Catholic, because you have to kind of start off this conversation by saying that as a Catholic, AKA a traditional Catholic, we believe that there is a mass apostasy in the Catholic Church. That is, unfortunately, the church being hijacked, if you will, in Trojan horse-like fashion by modernists, and I could break that down a little bit later, but they're called theological modernists. And basically what it is they're pseudo-Catholics with a K. They're not real Catholics with a C. They have like this kind of off Bud Light version to the original Bud version, and they're pitching it off to the public as Catholic, but it's really not. And the Catholic Church has condemned these people, these types of people, before what happened in the early 60s called this Second Vatican Council. And so throughout church history, there's been councils where popes will convene with bishops. They'll sit down and they'll put down onto paper, the areas dogmatically that Catholics have to follow, basically, to put it in layman's terms for your probably predominantly non-Catholic audience. But this council was a lot different because I know you know the sect of Freemasonry very well, and it interjected a lot of Masonic principles into play, cult of man principles, socialist/Marxist principles, which any Catholic throws their hands up and say, listen, we just can't follow it, whether it's coming from a pope, whether it's coming from cardinals, bishops, or whatnot. We can't follow it, period. So we believe that this is a period of time which Jesus forewarned us about. Some of the early apostles, the early church fathers warned that there would be a mass apostasy shortly before the arrival of the Antichrist. And I'm one of the very few in the Catholic community, sadly, that actually believes the Antichrist is literally right around the corner, perhaps even making his appearance onto the scene over the next few years after the economic collapse. But in terms of my background, raised what I thought to be Catholic, kind of went back and forth a little bit as I got into my I guess you could say teenage years. I went to it was literally in my early 20s. I went to a pretty well-respected supposed Catholic college out here in Ohio, which I still live closely to, Franciscan University. And then kind of had a falling away in my late 20s, I guess you could say. Didn't really believe in like organized religion or Catholicism. I really didn't even believe in a God at a certain point. I mean, I really fell away to that point. From a Christian perspective. But then I started coming back. God put me through a series of sufferings, you could say, put me on my back, so to speak, like what happened to some people in the Old Testament, or someone like Saul, where he got knocked off his horse, was put on his backside, and kind of was prompted in the right direction from a Catholic perspective. So I kind of came back to the faith at that point, started putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, because like you, I had for like about 20 years or so, sort of collected knowledge here and there about the New World Order, which I thought was useless at the time, reading all these books and magazines, Mark of the Beast, and all these various different things that you and I, discuss on the program when you come on my program. I thought it was kind of useless. And then I kind of integrated the theological side to it. So I literally spent, I quit working for a while, and all I did was study religion, like study the faith inside out for a good 3-year period. So I was reading all the encyclicals in the church, reading all the church councils in the church, and it becomes quite clear that what is being taught since the early 60s isn't the Catholic faith whatsoever. And that's what's kind of frightening, is your everyday Catholic doesn't recognize this, doesn't understand this, and not only do they not understand it, they don't want to hear it. And that's why I am pretty hated. As much as people know who I am, doesn't mean that they like me, because I'm very vocal. So I have a lot of Catholics who don't like me. I just started an Instagram page a couple months ago. My goodness, man, some of the hate mail behind the scenes is ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, that's just how it is, man. It's pretty chaotic, even in the traditional Catholic world. There's a lot of infighting. But in terms of my other background, listen, I come from a athletic background. I played basketball out here at Ohio. I mean, it's pretty good, I guess you could say. I'm tall, athletic. I'm trying to think of educational wise. I have got an undergraduate degree in business, minor in finance, psychology. Then I got my master's degree in business. Almost went on to get my PhD actually in West Palm Beach, Florida International. But I decided to stay the business path route while I was down in Raleigh, North Carolina for a little bit. So that's a little bit more about my background in general as it relates to just me, and then the religion side to it, I guess you could say. But In terms of the apostolate, Charlie, if I could, Tradcat Night is the #1 ranked Catholic channel by FeedSpot. It's a top 15 Christian channel. So there's a lot of different Protestant denominations out there. I think over like 50,000 at this point. You know how many YouTube channels there are. Well, according to FeedSpot, I'm in the top 15 for any YouTube channel that would be considered Christian. And my podcast list, I mean, my goodness, I've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds deep. We had a good show yesterday, by the way. I failed to mention this to you. I had Leo Zagami on the show.
Oh, yeah, he's great.
G. Edward Griffin came back on the show yesterday talking coronavirus. I've had similar guests that you've had on that you're kind of buddies with. I've had Jeff Berwick on the program. Yeah. Oli Damgard's coming back on the program again, I think in a few days, actually. So get over to tradcatnight.org and hopefully we see some new subscribers. But I literally cover it all. It's not just, Eric's going to be trying to Bible thump and trying to get us into organized religion. Of course, from a Catholic point of view, we want people to convert, but I'm not trying to shove stuff in people's faces. We've got people from all walks of life who are paid members, but I cover it all. The coming one world religion, the New Age, the Antichrist. We can get into the Fatima message here because it's quite interesting. I'm not sure if I talked about this with you, but there's an element to the real third secret of Fatima, which actually ties into the pandemic scenario, which is playing out. As a matter of fact, the WHO a few hours ago declared it formally a pandemic. Now, I'm not sure if you saw that.
No.
Yeah, I was out on Twitter. We got that out because I had on Daniel DiMartino today. She's a notable Fox Business financial analyst. And literally while we were talking, because she was getting ready to go on her Fox Business show, there was someone that came in and said, yep, they finally declared it, a pandemic or whatnot. So she kind of stopped and had to pause and kind of regather herself for the podcast. So we literally both got that out within a matter of minutes. But
we'll talk about that then. What does that mean? What is so they've classified it as a pandemic, and how does that play in this third secret of Fatima that you're talking about?
Okay, yeah. So essentially, with the Fatima message, just very briefly for the sake of brevity, it was basically the Blessed Virgin Mary. And by the way, the Blessed Virgin Mary has been visiting various holy souls in the Catholic Church, warning about the upcoming changes eventually, what we're seeing now transpiring in the past 50 years or so. So it was basically a pre-warning to this sort of new path, which ultimately is leading to the Luciferian path, right? The one world religion path. Mm-hmm. So the Blessed Virgin Mary has been warning over and over again. As a matter of fact, Our Lady of La Salette warned way back in 1846, Rome would lose the faith and become the seat of the Antichrist. That's probably not something you hear from a lot of Catholics these days, but that was approved by the Catholic Church. That was 1846. So this Fatima message was more recent, right? 1917, it was revealed. The Blessed Virgin Mary came to these three saintly children, and the first message dealt with the errors of Russia, which would be communism, which would be evolutionism, modernism. The second message was actually the three children were actually showed hell. So the Blessed Virgin Mary walked them into hell, and they were literally in there for just a matter of moments, and they depicted what they saw: souls falling into hell like snowflakes, like just all over the place. Now, this was back in 1917. I think we could all probably agree the world has gotten a little bit worse over the past 100 years. So I've always argued, I wonder what it looks like now. Again, if you're coming from a Christian perspective. And then the third message, ultimately, which hasn't been revealed by the Vatican for obvious reasons, because the Masons and the Marxists and the modernists are in control. They don't want you to know what the real third secret is because it blows their own horn. So it basically details the apostasy in the church, but then there's an apocalyptic element to it. It talks about all the crazy earth changes that would be happening. This is why I'm one of the rare Catholic websites, Christian websites, that covers this on a daily basis, because we believe the movie 2012 doesn't cut it justice. This is going to be worse than that movie 2012. There's also other movies like The Knowing out there, which depicts a chastisement, a fire coming down from heaven. I'm not sure if you've seen that one with Nicolas Cage.
No, I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, that's actually referenced in Apocalypse 8:7, and that one's found throughout Catholic prophecy. So a fire will come down and burn a greater portion of the earth. But in any case, so the third secret of Fatima, there's an element to it that Father Malachi Martin, who was a Jesuit whistleblower, so he was a Jesuit at one point. He knew what the third secret was all about, and he knew that the Vatican wasn't going to make moves on this. He said, "Okay, I'm going to whistleblow." So I'm sure in your circles, everyone, the big buzz of the day is the Jesuits. Everything is on the Jesuits, and I agree to a large degree. A lot is on the Jesuits, but there's also other elements too: socialists, the Marxists, the Zionists. I mean, there's other kind of angles to it as well. So he came out and started doing a world tour talking about more or less the third secret of Fatima, without actually giving you the exact text of what it was, because he was under oath by the Vatican not to reveal the text as is. So he would always go on Art Bell's show. I'm sure you've listened to Coast to Coast, and
of course
I've
been on Coast to Coast.
Nice. I've actually tried. I don't think they want to hear what I have to say. I've tried numerous times. Yeah, I've tried getting a hold of George Norrie. Well, I shouldn't say that. I think I was on one of the morning shows one time, but it was like only the radio version. Like I actually wasn't on like the YouTube portion of it. This was going back a few years though, now that I think about it. But in any case, there's an element to it that ties into what we're seeing right now. Now, I got to preface this by saying I didn't think the New World Order was going to pull the pandemic card out until about 2 years from now, because you and I have discussed predictive programming, and you and I both know they throw this stuff right in our face in the entertainment industry and video games and magazines and all throughout. And so here we are, 2020, and now we've got this coronavirus thing which has popped up. What was it, a couple weeks ago it started? But Father Malachi Martin says in relation to the third secret of Fatima that there would be diseases which would essentially be uncontrollable. And the one line that's always stood out to me, and this is directly coming off of one of the websites he maintained, he said whole nations would be wiped out overnight due to pandemics. So when I first saw that come up, I was a bit leery. I probably, like most people, were like, okay, like there's got to be something else, because the mainstream media is trying to get us all hysterical and run around with fear. And obviously there's a vaccine agenda aside to this. They're cooking up stuff in the lab for us to, take these vaccines, and eventually I think it'll tie into the whole mark of the beast system. But the police state, my goodness, we now got boots on the ground in upstate New York, National Guard, Seattle. Okay, so it's happening. They're unveiling it progressively, and I think over the next probably year, maybe less than 2 years, it'll be completely solidified. I mean, they're going to keep calling for these state of emergencies, keep saying it's getting worse and worse. There'll be more boots on the ground, and so on and so forth. Eventually, to where we know, and I think we've discussed this in times past. I mean, the ultimate aims is martial law. The ultimate aims is FEMA camps, quarantine camps. We now know that there's at least 11 major military bases which are going to be converted to quarantine camps. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist where this is going. It's not like this is just going to stop next week and it starts reversing and we all go back to normal. This will get progressively worse, but whole nations being wiped out overnight. I don't know. I don't think it's coronavirus. I still think they could be cooking up something else down the road that could be worse. I don't know, because from a Catholic prophecy standpoint, it's always referred to as like a multitude of diseases and plagues. It's never like just like one thing per se. So I don't know, but it's certainly of note to where obviously the coronavirus has affected every level, economically, obviously socially, people are freaking out. They don't want to go outside. Do I go outside and get my burger now? It's like people are thinking twice as crazy it sounds. I'm not going to let it affect me. I'm like, I don't think we can let fear grip us because we're just going to be playing into their hands in that fashion. But that's why I cover every topic, Charlie, as you know. Yeah. I mean, I cover health, I cover GMOs, I cover geopolitics, economics, geoengineering. I cover all this stuff, Project Blue Beam, vaccines, global depopulation. I literally leave no stone unturned. I'll talk about any topic, really, and trying to gather as much information as I can. Sorry, I'm rambling a little bit.
Yeah, well, I love it. That's why we're talking, because you've got knowledge about all kinds of topics. And you mentioned the Jesuits in that conversation, not in the context of them being responsible for the coronavirus, although I'm sure someone will claim that.
Yeah.
What is it about the Jesuits that's so polarizing, that has painted them as in some circles as being kind of the boogeyman? Is there something to that?
Well, I mean, I'll just start from where we're at today. I would argue that the Jesuit order is the most corrupted order. I mean, that goes without say. There's no order in the Catholic Church which is as corrupt as it is, both doctrinally, meaning on the doctrinal level, but then also just in general, as liberal as they are. They're highly LGBT. They're the ones that promote the alien agenda. I just talked about that with Leo Zagami. Like anytime you hear about the Vatican wanting to baptize aliens, or we just heard another radio signal from outer space, you can be rest assured it's going to be some Jesuit talking about it.
And why? Why do they care? What are they? Why do they? Are they interested in aliens?
That's a good question. I really don't have a straightforward answer to you. It's just that I guess as we've moved and progressed along in this modern world, that they've just become the most controlled. I guess the best, most infiltrated. Now, that's not to say that there's not good Jesuits out there. I mean, we obviously had Father Malachi Martin, who tooted their horn on him, and there's some traditionalists who kind of even are suspect of Father Malachi Martin, because there was some suggestion that he was a double agent, Mossad. I'm not sure if you were aware of that, but there's a group of Catholics called the Sedevacantists who always point that out. Well, Father Malachi Martin seemed to be like working for Israel and the Jesuits at the same time. So I don't know. There's an awful lot of information out there, but they are the most controversial, obviously. I think, whether you are Catholic or you are not. But listen, they've got kind of a marred past, and I know in times past there was one particular pope which had to sanction the Jesuit order at one point. It's called a bull in the Catholic Church. They literally had to place sanctions against them. Then it was later lifted by a certain pope. I don't have all the actual dates behind it, but it's kind of like seemingly throughout history they've always been sort of controversial. So moving fast forward to this day, it's quite clear that their hand plays a large role in this apostasy. I mean, take a look at not only Francis, who is supposed to be the first Catholic pope, and again, this is where, for those who follow my work, I don't believe Francis is a pope at all. In Catholic Church history, or in just the Catholic Church, there's been 42, if I'm not mistaken, anti-popes. And an anti-pope is basically a false pope, someone who claims to be a pope, but actually really isn't pope. So the Catholic Church has denoted in times past where there were various crises that have happened in medieval times, where there literally was like two claimants, or even three claimants at one point, and you had two false popes and one true pope, if that makes sense. So three people saying, I am Pope of the Catholic Church, but in reality, you can only have one pope. You can only have one head to the church, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So now we've got a situation where I believe that Benedict XVI was run out by this St. Gallian mafia. And when you take a look at and analyze the situation, and I broke this down with Leo Zagami a few days ago, again, get over to tradcatnight.org and check out that podcast. Leo Zagami is reporting there's actually fresh death threats against Benedict XVI. And going back some years before his supposed resignation, he actually had poison attempts on his life. So I'm not sure if you've covered this in kind of your work, because I know you cover conspiracy too, but there was a pope called John Paul I who was poisoned, many people think, by the P2 Lodge, I believe it was, the Italian Masonic Lodge. And he lasted 33 days. Again, we all know that symbolic number of Freemasonry. So he lasted only 33 days. He was poisoned, dead, done, over with. Now, the reason being was he was about to blow the lid off of the Vatican bank scandal at that time, and it seemed like he was moving into the direction of getting rid of the Second Vatican Council. Maybe that's too strong a word, but he seemed to be getting a little bit more conservative as opposed to keeping on this liberal path that these conciliar types had been moving along. So obviously the Masons took them out. Where was I going with this? Okay, so we have the Black Pope. We always hear about that with Sosa, I think is his name. We got it just runs so deep with the Jesuits. And listen, it's going to be tumultuous times ahead. I always want to reiterate to people when I do these kind of programs, as much as it seems like I'm going to be Debbie Downer when I'm talking about these things, we do believe that the church is going to survive, that there is, a rainbow beyond this storm, so to speak. But it's going to be the worst period of human suffering we are prognosticating in the not so distant future. Like I've been out on record. I'm not sure if you're even aware of this, Charlie, because I know you've seen some of my material out and about. But I truly do believe that 90+% of the world won't be around in the next decade. due to one reason or another, whether it's pandemic, which could obviously kill millions, but World War III is right around the corner, which ties in with the Fatima message. Because I know when we've done podcasts together, I've told you how with Trump stepping on the shoes of the Arab countries, Iran, particular Syria, Russia eventually is going to backlash, and it's in Catholic prophecy that Russia is going to attack the United States with its quote unquote secret weapons and overrun Europe. On the heels of saying that, we've got this Defender Europe 20 exercise or something happening where we're going to send 20 or 30,000 more troops over there into that area. I think some are going to funnel into the Italy area, but pay attention to the Ukraine area, because this is the area that Father Malachi Martin said would basically be the spark to World War III. So I got a feeling we're going to do something over there in the Ukraine area with NATO troops, and Russia's going to say, that's enough, and then it could get very ugly very quickly on that level. But the Fatima message is very much how do I put this? It's not being told accurately by a lot of Catholics, and there's going to be a new movie coming out. If I'm not mistaken, it's going to be a mainstream movie. Like, I'm not sure if it's going to hit mainstream like movie theaters or whatnot, but there's going to be a new movie coming out on Fatima, and I have no doubt that they're going to butcher this thing. Like, they're going to try to not tell you what's really going on, because the socialists and the communists know that they're close to creating this one world socialist kind of digital economy system, however you want to put it, digital republic, and they don't want they need to keep people off of the true path for a while. I'll let you jump in here, Charlie.
Hollywood lying to us? You don't say. Imagine that.
Mel Gibson was a traditional Catholic too, by the way. I tried writing him. He for those of you who saw The Passion of the Christ, that was a Mel Gibson production. He has very similar views to us. He's a sedevacantist. His father was a very popular sedevacantist, Hutton Gibson. He was actually on Alex Jones' show for a while back in the day, kind of breaking down the apostasy in the church or whatnot. So I tried to reach out to him. It was a couple of years ago. I wrote him a letter because there was rumors about him doing a Fatima message. So I thought he was going to go down the path of really exposing what the real third secret was. But I got as far as his PR department. They basically just sent back the mail and said, Mel's not talking, because he's been criticized, because I'm sure you've seen his criticism of, the New World Order and
people that run Hollywood.
Yeah. I'm trying. I don't know what I can say on your show when I can't, because I get banned.
You could say whatever it is. We all know he's talking about the Jews.
Yeah, exactly. So so the Fatima message is very, very important.
What do you think happened to Benedict? What happened to him? Because that seemed like it was, there was a lot of shadiness surrounding that. Next thing you know, he's in a helicopter flying out of there, and everyone's waving goodbye. And like most things, you feel like you didn't get the full story. And I don't know if the official spokesperson at the Vatican is somebody that I would necessarily just blindly trust. So I'm sure there's a little bit more to that story.
Yeah, you definitely want to trust any Vatican spokesman these days. But more or less, like I said, they basically wanted to get more liberal doctrines into the church. Like, they want women priests. I mean, they wanted to just go so far left in order to have it fit into this one world system. They basically want to embrace anyone and everyone, which from a Catholic perspective, you just can't do. This is why we believe that Jesus said, this is the narrow path. There's certain doctrines we have to follow. Like, we can't just jump off of that path and say, okay, this is our path, yet we're still going to claim Jesus's name, if you will. And that's basically what these modernists try to do. But listen, I'm not even a big fan of Benedict, so I don't want anyone walking out of here, oh, well, we got dirt on Benedict left and right, not only with his doctrine, but, he didn't really do a whole lot, to stop the whole pedo implosion, from within side. Not that he probably could have did more. I'm not saying he didn't do anything, but he probably could have did more. But there, so once this St. Gallian Mafia, which was led by notable Freemasons, by the way, Cardinal Daniels, Cardinal Martini, who once he died, by the way, was celebrated by Italian Freemasonry. I mean, they literally came out and held all kinds of ceremonies for him, right after. I was like, okay, this is pretty obvious that he was a high-ranking Freemason. Once they knew that Benedict wasn't going to go anywhere, they basically gave him an ultimatum, I think, and said, listen, you're either going to step down, you're going to resign, or we're going to get rid of you like we did John Paul I. And this is where, again, those assassination stories came up. And by the way, you can Google all this, but as you're listening to me, go to Google right now and type in Pope Benedict XVI poison attempts or something like that, and you're going to hit the stories. You're going to see all these cardinals talking about it shortly before his resignation. Now, it's also very interesting. Benedict XVI, I believe, knows that he's this long-awaited pope in Catholic prophecy to actually flee Rome. There's numerous prophecies which talk about a pope that's going to have to flee Rome because it's going to get that hairy. So I mentioned how Russia is going to already invade Europe. We're prognosticating Islam moving through into the Italian area as well. Although who knows with this coronavirus thing? I'm not sure exactly how this is necessarily going to play out. But then there's also internally, there's called these, the Occupy movements, Occupy Wall Street, Occupy this, Occupy. Well, there's an Occupy the Vatican movement. So I have no doubt that they're going to spring that up, kind of rile the people up. Now there's one seer. It was actually the same seer that the movie The Passion was behind, meaning her revelations were on paper, and Mel Gibson took what was in her writings and put it into that movie, The Passion. So that's literally this German mystic, Blessed Anna Emmerich's writings, put onto the video screen. Well, she made mention of this apostasy. She made mention how it comes from the Jews. Coincidentally, she made mention how there was a pope that was put off to the side in a castle, in a palace. Castle Gandolfo, which is where Benedict XVI is. She made mention of how he was very old. He can barely kind of keep his head up. Benedict's in his 90s now. And eventually it goes on to say how not Benedict, but this particular pope was not only very worldly, but he could trust very few people around him. So we believe that there's only a few cardinals that are kind of loyal and faithful to Benedict XVI at this point. But the prophecy goes on to say that mobs come into the Vatican, basically come into the area and basically burn it down. They'll burn down even Castle Gandolfo, and that's why I'm more or less thinking it's probably going to be like an Occupy the Vatican movement or something like that. And he's going to have to flee. It's going to force him to flee. So it's interesting in Catholic Church history. We take a look back, and the papacy has moved periodically. Not that it's happened a lot. I mean, one particular time, the papacy had to move to a short period of time into France for a short period of time. And I believe personally that this is where the Catholic Church will end up, because according to the prophecy, Benedict XVI is going to flee Rome. He's eventually going to move through Germany, and he's going to be killed somewhere. Whatever, socialist, communist forces, who knows, going to get him, kill him. And this is where it's going to get pretty crazy for Catholics out there, because at that point in time, Rome is going to be completely apostate. I mean, we already see the direction that it's going with all the false idol worship and craziness going on. This is why I think that the biblical false prophet and antichrist are close, that they'll assume and take over. Well, they're going to destroy Rome, first of all, but more or less take it over at the same time. And this is where the false papacy, if you will, of the one world religion will stay, at least temporarily. I think it could move also down into the Jerusalem area eventually, as some others are prognosticating. But it's going to be a crazy time, really, for anyone who identifies as a Christian. But for a Catholic, for them not to see like a living pope out there, possibly for a few years, they're literally going to sit back and wonder, like, everything that I've been doing as a Catholic, have I been following the true path? So I guess that's part of what my work is, to keep everyone in faith and hope. Like, we're going to get a new pope. Everything's going to kind of start turning around more or less at the last second. So we kind of just have to keep hanging on, so to speak. But it's going to look awful. It's going to look like the anti-Christian forces are going to win out in the end, but they're not.
Any truth to the rumor that Pope Benedict is actually Emperor Palpatine from Star Wars?
Right. Yeah, he's interesting. Yeah, I mean, listen, some of these characters, I mean, we could cartoon a whole lot of them. I mean, Francis, my goodness, he reads more like a Sunday morning comic as opposed to reading anything sound theologically. I mean, the point I wanted to make too is I was the first Catholic person in the media to say Benedict was the true Pope, and I made mention of this years ago when I ran a poll on my website. And I said, listen, more and more people are going to come to this conclusion over time, and sure enough, it's been happening. I mean, one after another person. Father Kramer, my former spiritual director, has adopted that position now. Antonio Sochi, Marco Tosati, Vagana, who's an archbishop in the church. We just had another retired Polish archbishop. His name was Archbishop Lenga, came out the other day, and he called Francis an antichrist. This is an archbishop in the Catholic Church. He said Francis was an antichrist. He was a formal heretic. He wasn't the true pope. That caused a big stir. So it's a lot of chaos and confusion right now in the church, and a lot of just everyday Catholics. I don't think they want to debate too much because they don't even know. Like they don't even have solid opinions anymore. They kind of just throw their arms up and they're like, well, okay, we're just going to kind of go through the routine, go to mass on Sundays and just, they don't want to get too deep into it because it's above their pay grade or whatnot. But yeah, there's a lot of characters. It's not just Benedict, but my goodness, there's some characters in the Vatican. And in my humble opinion, by the way, with this kind of Masonic takeover of the church, I actually asked Leo Zagami, it was last year on the podcast, because he's got a lot of inside sources, as does my former spiritual director, Father Kramer, like cardinals in the church. But I asked Leo, I was like, how many of the prelates, how many of the cardinals do you think are really Freemasons? Because according to Catholic theology, you can't be a Freemason and a Catholic. If anyone ever tells you, yeah, I'm a good standing Catholic and I'm a Freemason, it's like, no, you're not. You're automatically excommunicated from the church. That still stands. That's in the canon law written back in 1917, and it's been actually reinforced even in recent times in 1983 and so on and so forth. But Leo thinks one third of all cardinals are Freemasons, which is a pretty significant number, because if that truly is the case, I mean, you're talking about this Luciferian sect, taking over and then basically bullying the rest of the cardinals and the rest of the prelates into saying, hey, listen, you're going to submit to what we're teaching here, and if you don't, you either be demoted, you'll be pushed to the side, or maybe even killed, as the case, I believe, with Benedict XVI. So when I had Leo on last month, it wasn't this past podcast, it was the one previous to that, we were talking about how all of the popes outside of Benedict XVI seemingly were Freemasons. Montini, who was Paul VI, he thinks was a Freemason. John the 23rd, which I knew previous that he had ties with the Italian Freemasonry. Coincidentally, he doesn't think Benedict was a Freemason, as don't I. Even though I'm not a big fan of Benedict, I still think he's got to clean up his doctrine or whatnot. Benedict, by the way, also did make mention that the Catholic Church was going to go underground, which I find quite significant. He put out about a decade or so ago, Charlie, in one of his memoirs, indicating how the Catholic Church would no longer be able to worship in its original buildings, that more or less the church was going to have to start all over again, from a fresh start over, a fresh restart. And this is what we're prognosticating, that the church is going to go underground. The Antichrist and his forces are going to take over, and it's only going to be through a supreme act of God. In Catholic prophecy, we call it the 3 days of darkness, in which all evil is basically eradicated from the world. And so if you haven't looked into the 3 days of darkness, at least become more or less acquainted with it, because I think it's actually going to happen in between the 2025-2030 range, within that timeline. I've actually got a movie out on a mystic, one of the main mystics who talked about these 3 days of darkness. Her name's Marie-Julie Jahenny, and she has gotten everything right so far. All of her predictions so far have come to pass, including the Notre Dame fire. I don't know if you remember the Notre Dame fire that happened last year. She predicted that back in the late 1800s. There's actually a famous prayer card of her with her name on it, but Jesus is kind of like weeping in the forefront. And in the background, you see the cathedral fire happening in the background. Again, this is late 1800s. Now, some of her revelations they're not nice, because she talks about pandemics, a burning plague, which is going to overtake humanity. She talks about how Paris is going to be nuked, and out of the 9, I don't know how many, I think there's like 9 or 10 billion or 10 million people there, only 88 people are going to survive. So it's like not a lot of nice stuff coming. I'm just throwing little tidbits out there. There's an awful lot more, but I'm hoping some people will come over and check us out at tradcatnight.org. One of the ladies I have on my show, there's a famous house of hers in Brittany, France, which is going to be a safe place, a safe haven, according to Marie-Julie Jahenny during the times when everything goes crazy in Europe. She actually has the original house of Marie-Julie Jahenny still. She's in the possession of it, and she comes on my show quite regularly, although I haven't had her on in the past 3 months because she's under such stress. There's all kinds of new pilgrims flocking to that area because people are realizing that Marie-Julie Jahenny was basically a saint, and she saw all this stuff coming, so a lot of people are flocking there. I'm running a podcast series with her, so I don't want to give too much away, but a lot of detail there with the 3 days of darkness.
So Benedict predicts that the Catholic Church would have to go underground. Could the child sex abuse scandal be the event that causes that?
Yeah, that's one element of it. One element of it is the church is going bankrupt as a result of these scandals. I actually have been warning people of that like years ago. I said that would be one avenue, but the other avenue is going to be this coronavirus. Take a look at what's happening in Italy right now. I mean, they're literally on lockdown. I mean, you ain't going anywhere. They've canceled masses everywhere. What's going to happen here in the United States? You think we're not going to go unaffected? Of course we are. It's just going to happen more or less in stages. So I've been warning, years ago, I've been warning Catholics and priests even, because within the traditional Catholic circuit, there's a lot of priests who will, they start out in one location, like that's their home base. And in order to distribute sacraments to other Catholics, because we don't believe that the sacraments in we'll call it the conciliar church since Vatican II are valid. We think they're at least doubtful, so we try to stay away from mainstream Catholic churches, if that makes sense. I'm hoping that makes a little bit of sense. We believe that there was a change in how they intended to do things with the sacraments, which we think makes it dubious on the surface level that we might even be receiving graces from those sacraments, if that makes sense. So what we try to do is we try to network with other priests to help get priests into different countries. And my apostolate is international. I've got followers from all over the place: Poland, Asia, Russia. I mean, Australia. Every country is virtually represented. I've been doing this now for quite some time. So these priests will fly. Like they'll start out, like Father Kramer will start out in Ireland. He'll fly to the Philippines. He'll go to Italy. He would fly like all over the place. Well, I've been warning them for years. Once they implement global martial law, you ain't going anywhere. None of us aren't going anywhere. We're going to be on lockdown. And this is where, with this whole coronavirus thing, the next step seemingly is going to be like, okay, if you don't have that certain vaccine or whatnot, you're not going to move through one of these military checkpoints. You're not going to be able to drive through your Taco Bell to get your late night, your fourth meal or whatever, how the commercial goes, So I'm telling you, like they want to control us on every level. And I made mention of this too, because who was I talking about it today? Mark Dankoff. We were talking about the coronavirus and cashless society on today's program, and they can't control a lot of these cash transactions, right? You can still do a lot of underground stuff. I remember when I was, like 16 or 17 working on the boardwalk, and you're making, cash money or whatever. You don't let the IRS know. It sort of goes under the table, so to speak. You can't do that with the mark of the beast system, with everything going digital. They'll control it. They'll have one main central central bank or whatnot. Some people think it's over there in Switzerland with that bank called the Beast. I mean, it seems a likely candidate. I don't know. That could be conspiratorial. Maybe you could jump in on that, because I know you weigh heavily in on the economic side of things.
Well, for sure. The Bank for International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland is the central bank of central banks. And they have some very interesting restrictions on what can and can't happen in that building. Swiss authorities cannot enter that building. They cannot search that building. They can come with a search warrant if they want. They're not getting in. Anybody that works there has diplomatic immunity for the rest of their life. Anybody that works there does not have to cannot be brought in and charged with any crimes. They are the laws don't apply there to the people that work or live there, and they even built the structure to withstand a nuclear blast.
Wow.
So they're not messing around there. That is a devious and disturbing place, and where but that's that's banking. Banking is devious and disturbing once you peel away the exterior layers of what what looks like, oh, it's just banking, it's just money, and it goes from this place to that place, and you can buy a car, you can buy a house or whatever. Yeah, well, once you get into central banking, what you understand is that it is run by the same people that give you everything else bad in the world. So
right. Yeah, it all leads back to the same place. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. So what's the future? What's the future of the Catholic Church? Where's it going? It's been around for a very, very long time. They've got a plan for the future. What are they trying? What does success look like for the Catholic Church moving forward?
Well, for us, a Catholic prophecy reiterates over and over and over again that not only few people getting through this storm in general, just few in general are going to get through this, what I call a great storm. It's a convergence basically of everything happening. We've already talked about, the economic, social side of things, but we really haven't even dabbled into the earth changes thing, because we do believe that there is something out there, a space body, which is getting closer. That mystic that I already talked about, Marie Julie Jeheni, was forewarned by our Lord that there was, I forget how he put it, I could probably pull it up here in a second, but more or less a space body moving closer to us, which is going to just basically wreak havoc. And it's very similar to in the apocalypse, how it talks about how the kings and princes are going to go underground and they're going to beat their chests because they want to get their new world order across, but God's not going to allow them to have it. And I think God is going to make use of this space body passing through to cause an awful lot of devastation. Again, the movie 2012 doesn't do it justice, because it's going to be far worse than that movie. But the future for us is it's about faith and hope. What I believe that I've been called to do is help people transition on in this time period when it really looks bleak, and it's going to look bleak for us all. It's not just going to look bleak for people who are not Catholic. Trust me, anyone who's going to go through this time period is going to feel it. As a matter of fact, it gets so bad where in Scripture, Jesus says if he doesn't shorten the day for the elect, not one person would survive. He says people are going to be like looking ahead and prognosticating at some of the earth changes that are happening, and they're going to die of fright. Like, meaning we'll start reading a newspaper probably over the next year, and you're going to read 9.0 in Los Angeles, 9 point something in New York, and they're going to be happening like almost on a regular basis. So people are going to wake up and they're going to wonder, like, okay, are we next? People are going to be like anticipating, like what is going to be happening next. And that's basically what Jesus is talking about there. He says all the powers of the heavens will be out of, placement. This was also revealed to that mystic Marie Julie Jeheni, which I have a movie on, by the way. That's the point I was getting to. I get scattered brained a lot, as you know, Charlie, when we're doing even my show, I can't even hold a train of thought. But yeah, I've got a movie on Vimeo. If you go to vimeo.com, simply look in, type up Marie Julie Jeheni, Jahenny. I've got a whole 2.5 hour video on it, talking about the apostasy in the church, talking about the 3 days of darkness. And I give a little 15-minute sneak peek of that woman I was telling you about, Isabel from France, and another Frenchman who's like an interpreter. He's actually in Florida. His name is Xavier Ariel. So for us, it's a matter of kind of hanging on, so to speak, hanging on in faith and hope. That's why I use the eagle as a symbolic when people come over to tradcatnight.org, because in the Apocalypse 12:14, there's a scripture. It says, a great eagle with 2 wings takes the woman off into the desert, away from the beast or the dragon. I can't recall if the word beast or dragon was used, for 1,260 days. Now that 1,260 is going to be the actual reign of the Antichrist, 3.5 years. The church has always forewarned that this Antichrist, who's going to be Jewish, he's going to rule from, his capital is going to be Jerusalem. This is why you're seeing all the embassies moving down there, and they're trying to create all the courts of humanity down there. That's going to be the capital of the Antichrist. We're seeing talk of the third temple, and I got to have all the top, anti-Zionists on the program. And I believe in times past we've talked about this a little bit, but I was talking about this with Adam Green from No More News just a few days ago. He was on the show. One of the top rabbis is saying that he's basically talking with the Messiah on a daily basis. like, and his peace plan is coming and all this stuff. They're recently sacrificing, from an Old Testament perspective, the spotless lamb again and again. From our perspective as Christians, we're like, sorry, Jesus came, it's dead, done, and over with. There's no need for that anymore. And this is why this apostasy is largely Jewish on all levels, not only the apostasy in the church, but on the world level, because there's more or less the headpiece to what you would be, describing in your scenario, the octopus of global control, and all their tentacles kind of run out. And so I'm not saying it's every Jew, that's a far stretch, but it's predominantly Jewish and or synagogue of Satanish, if you will, the fake Jews. So what's also interesting about that, I'm not sure if I ever mentioned this to you, but from a Catholic perspective, the Jews actually convert to the Catholic Church. When the Antichrist does show up eventually, and he's performing all kinds of signs and wonders, and there's going to be two witnesses, which were in the Old Testament. They were Elijah and Enoch. They have not died. Most people don't realize this, but they've literally not died, and they're kind of waiting off in the wings somewhere. There's some people who think like maybe they went off in a spaceship or something. I personally don't believe in like aliens or spaceship, but I think they're reserved somewhere off in the off to the side, to where when the Antichrist does show up, they're going to show up onto the scene, and they're going to have similar abilities. I mean, they're literally going to be able to call down fire from heaven and do all kinds of like miracles to convert people to the Catholic faith. And so the Jews are actually going to realize that they've been following the wrong Messiah. They're going to realize they've been following the Antichrist, and they're going to embrace Catholicism and the true Christ. And later on, it goes on to foretell that the Antichrist is actually going to seemingly kill the two witnesses. They're called the two witnesses, by the way, Elijah and Enoch. They're going to be dead in the streets for 3 days, and everyone's going to be rejoicing, predominantly Jewish people, and those who hate Catholicism and Christianity. Then God's going to raise them from the dead. He's going to raise them from the dead, and everyone's going to, know, like, you can't mess. Can't mess with the truth. Can't mess with what we believe is the true faith. And then they're kind of, whistled off into heaven. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. I think we're going to go through some interesting times. We're going to go through this great storm. Few will get through this. Again, if you have not looked into the 3 days of darkness, I can't stress this enough. I got a whole resource page on this because there's certain things that the Blessed Virgin Mary said that you had to do to even get through those 3 days. And before we even get to the 3 days of darkness, we still got to get through pandemics. We still got to get through Civil War. We still got to get through World War III. We still got to get through some of these earth changes. So I'm prognosticating probably like half the world will probably even be gone before we even get to the 3 days of darkness. And during the 3 days of darkness, 3/4 of the world die alone. So it's very, it's not a nice message per se. It's certainly one of those, Saturday Night Live Debbie Downer. I always like to integrate a little sense of humor, because I think you have to have a sense of humor going in these times. But I think it's sort of like a Debbie Downer message where I got to put that face on like she makes.
Yeah. Well, I'm reading in between the lines, and I think I can pretty much tell what you're saying, and that is that Jared Kushner is the Antichrist, obviously. So he's Eric Gajewski. He does tradcatnight.org. You got to check him out for all of this information. He and I have been doing podcasts together for a while now. Yeah. Oh, it's always fun. Eric, thank you so much for your time. Certainly do appreciate it. Hopefully we'll send a lot of people your way. They can check out your work. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, good stuff. Charlie will be on my show in 2 days. 13th.
Yes, I will.
Yep, good stuff.
All right. Take care, everybody. Thanks.